Hello, everybody. Thank you, Judy. I really enjoyed listening to the words that you just said. So, some of you might have been here on Saturday. You're not going to get the same speech. I wanted to share a story from yesterday, actually. So, I was at an event yesterday in Concord, and I was speaking to a woman and introducing myself as I do when you travel the state running for U.S. Senate. And she started to share with me a story that sounded similar to some of the experiences that Judy has dealt with, where a refugee from Afghanistan who was targeted by the Taliban has been picked up by ICE here in New Hampshire. She lives in Hudson. I believe the Afghanistan victim also lived in Hudson, and he has been in jail now, locked up without being deported, without seeing a judge, without being charged with anything for over 6 months. Now, this is not how it's supposed to work. And those are the stories that need to get out there, because when people hear them, they'll realize that this is actually happening. And this puts all of us at a threat. This is a threat to every American and non-American alike. So all that's happening right now is built on the back of dehumanizing lies regarding people that don't look like the majority of people in this audience, and for people that come from different countries. It is wrong when we characterize immigrants as rapists, murderers, drug dealers, and gangsters. It is wrong when the president of our country says they're sending the worst to us and keeping their best. We all know that that's false. We all know that is an attempt to dehumanize and delegitimize their core personhood. And for me, we need to just start right there, that these people who are being victims by our government's oppression right now are human beings first and foremost. And if you can't see that, then you need to look in the mirror and ask what's wrong with you. You're the one who's spilling the hate. You're the one who's stirring the fear. And that fear has seeped into a high percentage of our population that we are now willing to risk our own rights because we're so afraid of the others that are crossing the border, as if they're dangerous and not humans like ourselves. And so this is one of the primary reasons why I'm running for the U.S. Senate. Because I feel that the leaders haven't stood up to this. The people who could speak and should speak have not spoken to the president and forcefully enough about what's going on. Our federal delegation, in my opinion, has been largely silent on this issue, and that is a dereliction of duty. These are the people who have one of the biggest voices in our state, and they are choosing not to use it on a regular basis to educate people about the risks, not just to these humans that are being sacrificed, but to the rest of us. Because this is just the first step. Whenever you hear dehumanizing language, whether it's against immigrants, whether against Jewish people during the Nazi times, whether it's against trans people today, when you hear dehumanizing language, what they're doing is stoking fear so that they can discriminate against them and then move on to the next group that they're going to target. That is a playbook that is as old as time with anybody who's trying to become an authoritarian leader. And it is happening in front of our eyes, and we need to stand up to it every chance we get. So one of the things we can do is use our voices, because there are people who are unaware of what's happening, as crazy as that may seem. There are people who are in the dark about what's happening, and then there are other people who might be aware of what's happening but think that the government has perfect intelligence, and if they pick somebody up, they got the right person. And they think it's okay because they're not an American, they don't get the protections of our Constitution. That is false. And we need to educate everybody that it is false. The 14th and 5th Amendments clearly tell that every human in our country gets due process. And that is logical if you look at this to the very end point. If you don't get due process, then any one of us could be accused as being an illegal immigrant, an illegal human, whatever they want to call us, all these dehumanizing language, and then we could be deported somewhere because we won't get our day in court. Everybody gets their day in court. And the fact that, to wrap up, the fact that I hear this story about this poor Afghanistan refugee who's in our country, whose family was targeted by the Taliban, and he's now been locked up for months without even having charges pressed against him, without having any explanation of what he did wrong or when he will get released. Somebody who is here legally, didn't cross the border illegally, that puts all of us at risk, because he's not even the quote unquote illegal immigrants, which is in itself a dehumanizing term. So I encourage all of you guys to keep showing up. Have these conversations with your neighbors, your friends, your family, whoever it is. Be calm, but speak to them about, hey, when we take away the due process rights from anybody in this country, we take it away from everybody in this country. And it's time to speak up to that. Thank you.